Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I was hunched over the desk in my office, pushing through the last of the payroll for Torquay Garage, when my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen. It was a text from Leo. Sold your old truck for $1,200. Dude's happy with it. Don't worry, got you some cash. I stared at the message. My old truck? I ran my hands over my face, trying to make sense of it. The only truck I had that wasn't a complete wreck was the 2021 Dodge Ram TRX, the one we used for promos, the one registered under Torque Garage LLC, the one that was worth over $90,000. I opened the registration on my computer. Shit, there it was. Torque Garage was listed as the owner. I gritted my teeth, typing a response with only one word. Interesting. Then I called Thomas. No greeting, just straight to business. Leo sold my truck, the 2021 Ram TRX, for $1,200. There was a pause. Jesus, you need to report that, Carmen. It's commercial theft. You'll need to involve the state police. I pinched the bridge of my nose, already dreading the fallout. Got it. Thomas added, you're gonna need to show the truck was part of the business. Property under Torque Garage. I'll help with the paperwork. I texted Leo again. Interesting? Then I went to work. I spent the next couple of hours gathering all the documents. Thomas had sent over the necessary forms for the business asset claim, and I had to make sure everything was airtight. I pulled up the truck's registration, proof of insurance, and the title, all under Torque Garage. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was theft. Thomas called while I was still working on the paperwork. The local department has been notified. I spoke with Detective Harris. He's already pulling the file. I sighed, letting the weight of it settle on me. And because of the truck's value and the fact it's registered to the business, this qualifies as felony theft. The state police will get involved too. That's a federal offense with how it's linked to the commercial property. My head throbbed. Right, what a mess. I glanced at my phone. No new messages from Leo, but I wasn't surprised. He'd be lying low. I couldn't figure out how to feel. Betrayed? Yeah, but I also knew Leo. This wasn't malicious. He'd always assumed I ran some small local shop, a place where you fix a few engines, make ends meet. It was why I lived in a shitty little rental by the garage, kept my old '99 Tacoma around for family events, and stayed out of the spotlight. I never told anyone much, not even Leo. I didn't want their pity, or their assumptions that I was struggling. I rubbed my eyes. Leo didn't know how big Torque Garage had gotten. He had no idea that truck was part of a fleet we used for national campaigns. It was like he'd always seen me as that person with nothing, even though I was just keeping a low profile. Then it hit me. When Leo came by the shop last week to borrow a wrench, I'd left my tool chest open, and that's when he must have taken the keys. The thought made me sick. I shoved the papers into a folder and typed out a quick message to Leo. Dude seemed real happy about the truck, said he'd never seen one so clean. Thanks again. It was a copy of what Leo had sent me earlier. I forwarded it to Thomas. Let's move. Before it crosses the state line. He replied right away. I'm on it. I'll make the call. I leaned back in the chair, looking around the office. My stomach was tight, my mind running 1,000 miles an hour. There was no way to make this clean. Even if Leo didn't mean to, he'd crossed a line, and now he was tangled up in something way bigger than he understood. I was about to hit send on a follow-up message to Thomas when I saw another text pop up from Leo. Just found out the guy who bought it was all over that truck. Said he's been looking for one like it for months. He's got it locked up in a garage somewhere, but the guy seemed real happy. He said he'd never seen one that clean. Thanks again. I read it through a couple of times, then set my phone down. Jesus, I muttered. That buyer was probably a fence, and now Leo was mixed up in some dangerous shit. No turning back from that. I exhaled and stood, pacing the small office. It was too late to undo any of it. But maybe, just maybe, I could get ahead of this before it went too far. The knock on the door came about an hour after I sent Thomas the last message. I wasn't surprised. I knew it was coming, just not when. But the FBI? They didn't waste time. I hadn't even gotten the chance to check in with Thomas yet when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mom. Carmen, what the hell is going on? She asked, her voice tight with panic. There are agents outside Leo's apartment. I leaned against the wall, trying to stay calm. I filed the report. It's a felony. The truck was stolen. It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. Leo sold a business asset. He committed theft. She was quiet for a second, and I could almost hear her brain trying to catch up. I don't understand. You're telling me that your truck, is worth what? $90,000. I didn't sugarcoat it. That's the base value. With the custom work, it's worth more. Jesus Christ. I could tell she was still processing. Hell, I was still processing, but I couldn't afford to. This was happening. I'm getting a call from the agent handling this soon, I added, not sure why I was trying to comfort her when everything was already falling apart. I don't know how this happened. I thought you were just doing a little mechanic work on the side. That's what you told us, right? A small shop? I felt the weight of her words settle into me, heavy like I'd been carrying them for years. She had no idea. They all thought I was scraping by, getting by on basic fixes and quick jobs. I kept it that way on purpose. I own a national-level custom automotive business, Mom, I said, the words finally hitting the air between us. Torca Garage isn't some little mechanic shop. I've got clients across the country, and that truck was part of my fleet, part of a SEMA-level promo campaign. It was never just my old truck. It's part of my business. There was silence on the other end of the line, like my words had stunned her into paralysis. It wasn't the kind of silence that came from understanding. It was more like a vacuum where nothing could fill the space. Carmen, she finally said, quiet and uncertain. Why didn't you ever tell us? I stood up straighter, the tension in my chest tightening. Because I wanted to know how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing. The silence stretched out again, but this time, it felt different. Less like disbelief and more like the weight of what I was saying finally settling in. You should have trusted us, my mom said, her voice thick. I could hear the hurt in it. We're your family? I closed my eyes for a moment. I didn't want you to see me as someone who needed you. I wanted you to see me as me, not as some charity case. She didn't respond right away. I think she didn't know what to say, and honestly, I didn't either. But there was nothing left to hide anymore. I could only deal with the mess that had been made. Before I could say anything else, the phone buzzed again. Thomas. I glanced at the screen, but the call dropped immediately after I answered. The phone rang again, and Thomas was on the other end, his voice low and sharp. Carmen, they're moving fast. They've already got Leo in custody. I just spoke with Detective Harris again. This is escalating quickly. You need to be ready for what's coming next. I gripped the phone tighter, feeling the anxiety tighten in my chest. Okay, I'll deal with it. I hung up and turned back to my mom. I have to go, I said, pushing down the discomfort. I'll keep you updated. She didn't say anything as I hung up. The air in the room felt thick, full of everything we hadn't said. I walked to the door, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside. The cool air hit me like a slap, but it didn't help clear my head. Things were spiraling fast, and I was getting pulled right into the center of it. I wasn't sure where to go next, but one thing was clear. This wasn't going to be over anytime soon. I spent the rest of the evening in a haze, sending over contracts, proof of ownership, and surveillance footage to Detective Harris. I had to cover every angle, make sure there was no room for mistakes. I wasn't going to let this be swept under the rug because Leo was family. Not this time. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was Agent Bailey. Carmen, he said, voice flat, I'm calling to inform you that Leo has been charged with commercial vehicle theft and illegal resale of business property. I swallowed hard. The words were heavier than I'd expected. It was official now. Leo wasn't just in trouble. He was facing serious charges. Does he understand what he's facing? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He's aware, but I'm not sure he fully grasps the extent of the situation. Felony charges are on the table. This isn't just a stolen car. It's part of a federal investigation. He's tied to a bigger network. He's deep in this, Carmen. I leaned back in my chair, trying to breathe through the tension in my chest. Right. I'm going to visit him tomorrow. Good idea, Bailey said. You'll need to make sure he doesn't say anything that'll make this worse for him. Got it, I muttered, hanging up without saying another word. Before I had a chance to process, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mom. Carmen, I just don't understand. How could Leo do this? You need to fix it, right? You can make this go away, right? Her voice cracked at the end, the panic thick in her words. I paused, running a hand over my face. Mom, I can't fix this. Leo crossed a line. This isn't a small mistake. He stole a business asset, and now it's a felony. Even if he didn't know the truck's real value, ignorance isn't a defense. But your family, Carmen. Her voice hitched again. You can make it go away, can't you? You've got the money. You're in control of this, aren't you? I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the street below, trying to center myself. No, I can't make this go away, Mom. And I wouldn't, even if I could. Leo needs to face the consequences for what he did. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her words were slow and unsure. But he's your brother. He didn't mean to. Mom, it doesn't matter if he meant to or not. He took something that didn't belong to him. And now we have to deal with it. There was another pause, this one longer, like my words had hit her in a way she wasn't prepared for. I don't know what to say, Carmen. I thought you would protect him. I am protecting him, I said firmly, by making sure he faces the truth. Letting him walk away from this would make him think it's okay to keep crossing lines. And I can't do that. She didn't argue. The line went quiet, and I knew she wasn't going to be able to accept it. Not now, at least. But I couldn't soften it for her. Not anymore. I glanced at the clock. It was getting late, but I had to keep moving. I couldn't afford to let things slip. As if on cue, my dad's voice came through the phone. "What's going on with Leo?" he asked. His tone was calm, almost detached, like he was trying to get ahead of his own panic. "Dad, Leo's been charged. It's bad. He's facing felony charges, and there's nothing I can do to make it go away." I could hear him take a breath on the other end, like he was gathering himself. "So you're just going to let him rot in jail?" I gripped the edge of my desk. "I'm not letting him rot, Dad. He's going to have to face the consequences. But I'll make sure he gets legal help. I'm not abandoning him." There was a beat of silence before he spoke again, quieter this time. "You can't fix everything, Carmen. You can't save him from this." I bit my lip, feeling the weight of the truth settle in. "No, I can't. But I won't pretend like it's not real either." Dad was quiet for a moment. "So what now?" "I'm going to see him tomorrow," I said, my voice firm. "And then we'll figure out how to move forward." They didn't say anything after that. They couldn't. We all knew there was nothing left to say. Leo had made his choices. Now we had to live with the fallout. I hung up, sat back down, and stared at my phone. It was almost time to sleep, but I knew I wouldn't be able to rest until I saw Leo face to face. He needed to understand the mess he'd made, and maybe, just maybe, he'd finally realize the cost of his actions. I walked into the county detention center just after noon. Leo was sitting in a chair on the other side of the glass, wearing a jumpsuit that made him look smaller, more fragile than I remembered. His eyes were wide, and there was a nervous energy to the way he fidgeted, shifting in his seat, picking at the cuffs on his wrists. He looked worn out, scared even, and for a second I almost felt bad for him. Then I remembered what he'd done. I sat down on the opposite side of the glass, pressing my palm against it, wanting to feel like I could reach through it and shake some sense into him. He leaned forward, his eyes scanning my face as if searching for some sign that this was all a big mistake. "You came," he said, voice hoarse, like he hadn't been speaking much. "Yeah, I came," I said, forcing the words out. "You know what this is, right? You know how bad this is, Leo?" He shifted again, trying to sit up straighter. "I didn't mean to get into any of this, Carmen. I thought it was just your old shop truck. You know, the one you used to haul parts around. I didn't know it was anything important." "Important?" I scoffed, leaning in closer to the glass. "It wasn't just your old shop truck, Leo. That truck was part of a fleet I use for my business. It was registered under Torca Garage LLC. It was part of a SEMA-level promo campaign. You sold a business asset, and now you're facing felony charges." He blinked, his face blanching. "Wait, what? You're telling me that truck—" His voice trailed off. "That truck was worth— how much?" I leaned back in my seat, my stomach churning with a mix of anger and disbelief. "That truck? It was worth over $90,000. Do you even get what that means? Do you realize what you've done?" He shook his head, disbelief clear on his face. "I didn't know, Carmen. I thought it was just a damn work truck. You never told me what it was worth." "I didn't need to, Leo. I never thought you'd steal it." My voice broke on the last word, frustration and hurt cutting through. I swallowed hard. "I never told you because you didn't ask. You just took." His shoulders slumped, and he looked away, like the weight of what I said was starting to hit him. But then he perked up, almost desperate. "Why didn't you just give me the money? I needed it. I'm behind on some bills. I needed to cover a couple of fight bets. You know how it is." Yeah, I know how it is, I said, my teeth gritted. But that doesn't excuse what you did. You didn't ask. You didn't come to me. You took it without thinking about how it affected anyone else. He looked down at his hands, his voice getting smaller. I didn't think. I just needed the money. I thought I could flip it, get a little cash. I didn't know it was tied to your business, Carmen. Yeah, well, you should have asked. You should have thought. I pressed my palms flat against the glass, wishing I could shake some sense into him. And it's not just the truck. I've been going through everything, Leo. The electronics and tools you've been selling online. I've seen the listings. Some of that stuff came from my shop. His face froze, his eyes darting to mine. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been selling my equipment. Maybe that's tied to the same investigation. Maybe it's why they're moving so fast on this. And if that stuff's been part of a bigger theft ring, you're even deeper in it than you realize. He shook his head, holding up both hands like he was trying to block me out. No, no, Carmen. Those were winnings. I swear. I won them in a bet. That's all. Winnings? I shot back, my voice cold and hard. Then prove it. Prove that any of that shit was winnings. Because I don't believe you. He looked down, his shoulders hunching, as if he were bracing himself for something. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I just needed the money. Stop, I snapped. You don't get it, Leo. This isn't about money. It's about you taking something that wasn't yours, and now it's caught up with you. You can't undo this. You can't walk away from this like it's just some dumb mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he whispered, almost to himself. His voice cracked, and I could see how badly he was trying to hold it together. But it didn't matter. Not now. Yeah, well, it did, I said, standing up from the chair. And now you need to face the music. Don't make this worse for yourself. You're going to have to deal with the consequences of what you did. I can't fix it for you, Leo. He slumped in his chair, his hands clenched into fists. I couldn't even bring myself to feel sorry for him anymore. Maybe if he'd asked for help instead of just taking, this wouldn't be happening. But it was, and there was no going back. I'll see you soon, I said, turning away from the glass. I'm going to do what I can to help you, but you're going to have to help yourself first. You need to prove you're not just a victim of your own stupidity. I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned and walked away, the sound of his soft sobs barely reaching me as I left. I had to keep moving. We all did. The next morning, I got the call from Agent Bailey. He wasted no time getting to the point. Carmen, he said, his voice steady, we've tracked down the buyer of the truck. Turns out he's tied to a major theft ring moving high-performance vehicles across state lines. That sale? It's part of a much bigger operation. I ran a hand through my hair, my stomach dropping. So Leo's in deeper than we thought. Way deeper, Agent Bailey confirmed. Your brother's sale has put him smack in the middle of a federal investigation. The truck was recovered, but it was damaged during a cross-border sting. It's still a big win for us, but the damage is done. Jesus, I muttered. He's really screwed this up. You're telling me, Bailey replied dryly, we're looking at racketeering charges on top of everything else. If Leo cooperates, helps us with the investigation, it could go a long way in reducing his charges. I exhaled, feeling the weight of it all press in on me. I'll talk to my lawyer. He'll work out the details, but Leo has to understand what this means. After hanging up, I called Tomas. I had to get a grip on everything, figure out what the next steps were. By the time I ended that call, I was already planning the family meeting. I texted Alejandra and asked her to bring Leo's girlfriend over to the house for a meeting. It wasn't going to be comfortable, but it needed to happen. They all needed to hear it from me, not just the police or some lawyer. It was time to lay everything on the table. When they showed up a couple of hours later, it was awkward right from the start. Alejandra had a tight look on her face, probably because she could already tell things were about to get ugly. Leo's girlfriend, Sarah, was more subdued, glancing around nervously. She must have known how much trouble Leo was in, but it hadn't quite hit her yet. She hadn't seen what I had, Leo's life unraveling piece by piece. We sat down in the small living room, everyone fidgeting and avoiding eye contact. I wasn't about to soften any of this for them. Not anymore. I needed them to understand exactly what was going on. I need to be clear with all of you, I started, voice steady but hard. I've been running a national-level custom automotive business for the last few years. Torque Garage isn't some side hustle. It's my full-time business, and it's been growing fast. We do high-end restoration, performance upgrades, SEMA-level projects. And that truck Leo sold? It was a huge part of it. A company asset, a promotional vehicle, worth over $90,000. I let the words hang in the air, watching them process. Alejandra blinked, shocked, and Sarah looked like she was just starting to put the pieces together. Alejandra opened her mouth, but I cut her off before she could say anything. I've kept it low-key for a reason. You all thought I was struggling, right? That I was running a small shop. I kept that image up because I wanted to see who treated me like I mattered when they thought I had nothing. Alejandra's eyes narrowed. So, you were testing us? No, I snapped. I was protecting myself. I didn't want anyone in my life treating me differently because of what I had or didn't have. I wanted to know who actually cared about me, not my money. And now you're finding out the truth. All of it. Sarah's eyes flickered between me and Alejandra, but she stayed quiet. Alejandra, on the other hand, wasn't holding back anymore. You kept all of this from us? She asked, the disbelief clear in her voice. For what? To prove a point? I shook my head. To protect myself. To make sure I wasn't treated like a charity case. And yeah, it's messy now, but you're all learning the truth whether you want to or not. Leo crossed a line. You need to understand that. She folded her arms, clearly pissed off. I get it, Carmen. You're not some poor mechanic. But Leo didn't know any of this. You can't just throw him away. I let out a long breath, trying to keep my temper in check. I'm not throwing him away. But this isn't just some oops moment. He's involved in a federal case now. He could end up in prison. Do you understand what that means? The buyer of the truck is linked to a criminal ring, and Leo's the one who put it all into motion. If he doesn't cooperate, it's only going to get worse. Sarah finally spoke up, her voice quiet but urgent. So, what's the plan? What are we supposed to do now? I looked at her, my expression hard. Leo needs to make this right. He has to cooperate with the investigation, name names, and help them track down the rest of the stolen vehicles. If he does that, maybe, just maybe, he'll get some leniency. But it's on him, not me, not you. He needs to take responsibility. Alejandra stared at me for a moment, then muttered, You've really got it all figured out, don't you? I didn't respond right away. I wasn't here to justify myself. I'm just doing what I have to do, I said quietly. What Leo has to do. We all sat there in silence, the weight of the truth finally sinking in. It wasn't just Leo who was in the middle of a mess. It was all of us. But Leo had made the choice, and now we had to face it. I'll keep you all updated, I added, standing up. But right now, I need to deal with the rest of this. You'll hear from my lawyer. I walked toward the door, not looking back. It wasn't just the business I was protecting anymore, it was everything. And the family I thought I knew? They were still figuring out where they stood in the mess Leo had made. Later that evening, we gathered at my parents' house. Mom, Dad, Alejandra, Leo, and me. The air in the living room felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to break. Leo was quiet when he walked in, looking like he'd been carrying a weight on his shoulders for years. I didn't know what to expect from him, but it sure as hell wasn't what came next. I need to say something, he began, his voice shaky. I've been gambling. For years, his words hit the room like a bomb. We all stared at him, stunned into silence. He kept talking, eyes locked on the floor like he couldn't bear to look any of us in the eye. I've been hiding it from all of you. Losing money. I kept telling myself it was going to be my big win, and I could fix everything. But it kept getting worse. I thought if I kept it hidden, no one would know. I thought I could control it. His voice cracked, and he let out a shaky breath. But I couldn't. I didn't know what else to do, and then I saw the truck, and I thought, maybe this will finally fix everything, but I didn't realize how far I'd already fallen. Alejandra's face fell as she looked at him. I knew you were gambling, but I covered for you. Every time you needed money or lied about a bet, I covered for you. I thought you'd fix it on your own, but I guess I was just as bad as you. Leo looked at her, and for the first time, I saw genuine shame on his face. I'm sorry. I never wanted you to be part of this. I never wanted to drag you into my mess. Mom, who'd been sitting quietly on the couch, suddenly spoke up. Her voice was sharp, filled with the kind of anger I hadn't heard from her in years. This whole time, Leo, you've been gambling, and we had no idea? I don't know who you are anymore. She turned to me then, like I was the cause of everything falling apart. And you. Why didn't you ever tell us? Why didn't you tell us what you were doing? We thought you were struggling. Working yourself to the bone? Why didn't you let us in? I closed my eyes, feeling the frustration build. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the tension rising. Because you all assumed I was failing because I didn't brag. I didn't want to be treated like I was some project for you to fix. You all saw me as some small mechanic with no real future, and I didn't want to share that with you. I wanted to be treated like I mattered for who I am, not what I could give you. Mom shook her head, her face red with frustration. You could have trusted us, Carmen. We're your family. I didn't want your pity, Mom, I said, my voice firm but quiet. I wanted you to respect me for what I was building, not for what you thought I was. The room went quiet after that, the weight of everything sinking in. My mom and dad exchanged looks, but neither of them said anything right away. Alejandra shifted in her seat, avoiding eye contact. Dad finally spoke up, his voice softer but still serious. So, is there still a chance to help Leo? Can we still do something? I looked at Leo, his head hanging low in shame. I'll pay for his legal help. I'll get him counseling. But Leo has to do the work. He has to earn any second chances. Leo looked up then, his eyes pleading. I'll do whatever it takes, Carmen. I swear I nodded, but it didn't make the situation any less complicated. The truth was out now, and it wasn't just about the truck anymore. It was about years of secrets, lies, and assumptions, and everything was shattered in front of us. Mom stood up, walking toward the kitchen without saying another word. Dad followed her, but he didn't look back at me. Alejandra was still sitting there, her arms crossed, eyes darting between Leo and me, unsure of where to land. The silence in the room was deafening. It wasn't just the weight of Leo's actions that hung in the air. It was everything that had been left unsaid for too long. It was the years of not really knowing each other, of building walls to protect ourselves, even from the people we were supposed to trust the most. I felt that silence press down on me, heavier than anything else, and it made me realize just how far apart we all were. We weren't just fixing one mistake. We were trying to rebuild a family that had been broken long before any of this started. I didn't know where we would go from here, but I knew one thing for sure. This was going to take time, maybe more time than any of us had. It took a few weeks, but Leo's situation started to settle. Thomas and the legal team worked with the detectives to clear some of the heat from the investigation. They helped document his previous online sales, nothing on a large scale, nothing too connected to the stolen goods, but enough to show Leo wasn't running a full-on operation. It helped paint the picture that he wasn't part of the bigger theft ring, and it made the charges seem less severe. Still, the damage was done. Leo's felony theft charge wasn't going anywhere, but with his cooperation, they reduced it to just one count. Still serious, but not as bad as it could have been. He'd be on probation, with community service and mandatory counseling. The court also signed off on a rehab-style program for his gambling addiction. He was lucky. We were all lucky. But it wasn't going to be easy for him to turn things around. I offered him a probationary job at the garage, mainly warehouse inventory and cleanup. No access to customer vehicles or business accounts, and he had to prove himself. No exceptions. When I told him the terms, his expression was a mix of relief and humility. I'll do whatever it takes, Carmen. I won't screw this up. I promise. I nodded, not letting myself soften too much. I had to keep it professional. You have to earn this. No more chances if you screw up again. Understood? Understood, he said quietly. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was something. Weeks passed, and I focused on my own growth too. I started showing up to family events in nicer clothes, not hiding behind the image I'd created of the small, struggling mechanic. The Tacoma was still parked in my driveway, but I'd finally brought the truck I used for work, the one that had been part of the mess, to family gatherings. I wasn't hiding who I was anymore. I noticed the shift when I showed up at dinner one night in a new jacket, the kind I'd wanted for a while but never felt comfortable buying before. My mom looked at me and said, "You look nice. You look different, more confident." It was awkward at first, and the tension was still there. I knew they hadn't fully processed everything, especially when it came to Leo. They wanted to be proud of me, but it was hard for them to let go of the picture they'd had of me, the one where I was still the small-town mechanic who'd never left. You know, I always thought you were just getting by, Dad said one evening, sitting across from me at the dinner table. His voice was low, like he wasn't sure how to navigate the new reality. But you've really built something here. I didn't know how much it meant to you. I met his gaze, feeling the weight of years of assumptions hanging in the air. I didn't want you to know because I didn't want it to change anything. I didn't want you to look at me differently. But I guess I've been hiding too much, huh? He nodded slowly. Yeah, a little bit. He exhaled and shook his head. But you're doing well. I can see that now. It wasn't a full embrace of what I'd accomplished, but it was something, a small step. Mom still looked at me like she wasn't sure how to feel, but she'd stopped asking me why I'd kept things from them. She didn't need to anymore. Leo came by the shop every day for work, his eyes still wary but slowly becoming more comfortable in his own skin. He stayed focused on the inventory, on the cleanup, and I could tell he was trying. Not just because I was watching him, but because he was finally taking responsibility for his actions. It wasn't going to be a quick fix, and I knew that, but it was progress. One afternoon, as we were closing up, Leo handed me a piece of paper. It was his first check, just for a few hours of work, but still. He handed it over without saying anything, and I knew he was proud of it. Thanks, Carmen, he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. For the job. For the second chance. I didn't smile or try to soften the moment. I just nodded. Don't screw it up, Leo, and keep working on yourself. That's what really matters. He nodded back, looking at me like he knew I meant it. We both knew there was a lot more to prove. And as for me, I was finally stepping into who I really was. No more hiding behind a mask of modesty. It was time to be proud of what I'd built, proud of how far I'd come. Even if it still felt awkward to watch my family adjust, I knew I couldn't keep apologizing for my success. Things weren't perfect. But they were real now. It had been just over a year since Leo's arrest, and the change in him was undeniable. He had kept his head down, worked hard, stayed clean. He'd attended every counseling session, completed his community service, and followed through on his promises. I'd seen him turn things around, little by little. One evening, as I was finishing up a late shift at the shop, my phone buzzed. It was Leo. I picked it up, not sure what to expect. Hey, Carmen. His voice was steady, calm. It's been a while. Yeah, I said, leaning back against the desk. How's it going? I'm good. Better than I've been in a long time. I've been thinking a lot. About everything. There was a pause, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Do you forgive me? For everything? I rubbed my eyes, the weight of his words hitting me harder than I expected. Leo, forgiveness happened a long time ago. The day you stopped lying to me, the day you started owning up to what you did. That's when I forgave you. But trust? His voice dropped, quieter. You don't trust me, not like you used to. I could feel the truth of that in my chest. Number trust takes time. You don't get it back just because you want it. It's earned. And you've been working to earn it, Leo. That's why I've been here for you. But you've got to keep proving you can be trusted. Every day. There was a long silence on the other end. I could tell he was processing what I was saying, maybe even hearing it for the first time. I get it, he said finally. I do. I'm not asking for a free pass. I just want to know I'm not still screwing things up with you. I smiled, despite myself. You're not screwing things up right now. You've been clean for a year. That's huge. But don't forget, you've got to keep showing up. No one's handing you anything. I won't forget, he said, a quiet determination in his voice. Thanks, Carmen. I've been trying to do better. For you, for me. I know, I replied. And I'm proud of you. But just remember, this isn't just about me. It's about you too. There was another pause. Then Leo's voice softened, like he was about to say something that wasn't easy. I've learned a lot. About you. About myself. I never really saw you for who you are. Not before. Not really. You were always so quiet about your life, your business. I didn't know how much you were holding back. I felt a knot in my throat. It wasn't just the guilt I'd seen in him. It was the recognition that our relationship had always been built on assumptions. We had never really seen each other. Not fully. I wasn't hiding, Leo. I just didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I didn't want to be the one people felt sorry for. I didn't want my success to make anyone else feel small. I paused, reflecting. But I've learned, too, that hiding who you are doesn't protect anyone. It just keeps everyone in the dark. You're right, he said, sounding sincere. You've always been stronger than I realized. I smiled softly, the edge of the conversation softening. I've always been strong enough, Leo. I just had to stop pretending I wasn't. We both sat in the silence for a moment. the weight of the year's lessons hanging in the air. My family had always loved me, but only after they saw who I really was did they start respecting me. It was a bitter truth, but it was one I had to face. Leo had only ever valued what I had when he thought it was nothing. I leaned back in the chair, my hands folded in my lap. We're okay, Leo, but don't expect me to forget that it wasn't just a bad mistake. It was a choice you made, and you have to live with that. But I gave you a chance because family deserves a path back, not a free pass. A real chance. He was quiet for a moment, and I knew that message had landed. Thanks, Carmen. Really. I exhaled slowly. You're welcome. As I ended the call, I felt something shift inside me. Not everything was fixed, and it wasn't all easy, but it was real now. It had taken time, patience, and a hell of a lot of honesty, but we were finally where we needed to be. The masks were gone, the walls had crumbled, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to protect anyone's ego, least of all my own. I smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because it felt like we were finally moving forward.